Hi Flosstube! Heather-Confetti Stitcher here with you again today. Today I'm going to do my fabric dyeing tutorial for you. I had a lot of people that were interested on my last video from the comments. I do mine with a low immersion dyeing technique. I like a lot of the modeling in it, and so that's the technique I'm going to show you today. So first off, the dyes that I use are going to be, by the way, apologize in advance if this is a little bit choppy. I'm still working with my husband's tripod, and I taped my phone to it, so because that's what I'm filming with. So the dyes that I use are, let's see if I can find a whole one. That's about as good as I'm gonna get. I use these, the Tulip brand from Michaels. I like to get them with a coupon. They don't sell these, I don't believe, at Joann's, but they do have a different, I also use these. They have the Dylon. And I only use the powders because that way I can control how much color I'm using. And it puts me more in charge. So the materials you're going to need is going to be your fabric, obviously. So I'm going to be doing two different dyes today. So both of them are going to be the Ada Stardust, which is the silver, it's got the silver sparkle in it. And I just got these from Michaels. And the two patterns I'm going to be dyeing for today is going to be Zenia, as well as Cleo. Cleo is going to be a little bit interesting since I dyed Emmy, I believe it was, the teal color, and I did Raven the purple color. I'm actually going to use, since those are her two main colors, I'm going to try a combination of both. So I'm going to try to do a little bit lighter greenish teal, and then the purple, so we'll see how it works. So what I dye with is going to be hang on. Two grocery store bags. Always reduce, reuse, and recycle, right? And then I always use just a plastic Taco Bell cup or plastic cup from wherever. The reason that I use the plastic is because I don't want the paper cups to absorb any dye that I would be using. You also need whatever colors you want to dye with, as well as, I don't believe I have a spoon. This is just an old one, but obviously anything you're going to be using for your dyeing you don't want to eat off of. So this is just an old one I have, and I just keep it with it. And then you're also going to want some some soda ash. They sell this, the Tulip brand, as well at Michaels. It's generally around $5–6. Each of the dye colors that I use are generally around $2, but they last a really long time. The soda ash is a dye fixative, so what it does is it prepares your fabric for dyeing, and it also helps you get more of the mottled effect. Now if you don't want a mottled effect, you can do the same process. You would just use more water and more dye, obviously, and then you would want to swirl it around while you're dyeing. So the soda ash comes in I don't have one at the moment, but it's like a pink box, and it's sold right next to the regular dyes. So the colors I'm going to be using today is going to be purple, black, which is going to make my gray, because my fabrics are all going to be the gray color as the main color. And then I'm also going to use, I forget what color this is, rose, I think. It's like a pinky red. And I'm going to use, I'm going to try a combination of the dark green, which I'm going to use a very, very little of. The Tulip brand doesn't have that many colors, so that's why I got a dark green and a deep red. But I'm going to mix the dark green and a little bit of this teal color because I'm going more for a slightly muddier teal. Then the last thing that I use, actually I think I'm going to, instead of the dark green, I think I'm going to use, I just realized I had this lighter green color because I think that that would actually be a lot better. Sorry, I tape all of my dies shut. This one's not cooperating. Now, I would not do this in a regular sink. I would only do it in a stainless steel sink, at least starting off. Or I would at least double or triple bag my my fabric. I only have one bag here. I live in California. We are currently on a plastic bag ban, so I'm trying to save as much as I can from the plastic bags that I do get. But since I have not run into any problems with my stainless steel sink, with it dyeing in any colors or anything. It's always washed out, maybe for a day or two, but it'll wash out when you do regular dishes and stuff. So entirely up to you. If you live in a state that's not California and you can use the bags, go ahead and feel free to use as many as you want. I've double and triple bagged before, just as an extra necessary precaution. The soda ash kits do include plastic gloves because the soda ash is very drying to your hands. You also don't want to breathe it in or breathe in any of the dyes. So some people like to wear a mask. I don't dye it often enough to really make it worth it, I don't think. The whole process for me generally takes around 2.5 to 3 hours. So I'm obviously going to cut and I'll be putting more than one video together. So the first thing you want to do, now there's actually 2 different ways you can do it. For me, I have a Keurig coffee maker. So what I do is I use that as my hot water source. You can also just boil water and use that because you want it to be sure you're doing hot water with this technique. So I'm just getting my fabric out, and to get the mottled effect, so this is my fabric. I'm just going to scrunch it up as much as I can. The parts where the dye does not get onto are the parts that are going to stay this color. So I'm going to put one in each of my bags because I'm dyeing them the 2 different colors. I did make sure that there was no holes in my bag before I started. And I apologize if I sound a little nasally. I just got sick yesterday. So my other fabric, same exact kind. So most of the time of the fabric dyeing is really just waiting, just sitting around. So you could do it on a weekend. The actual dyeing part, sorry, I'm going to put my hair up so that it's easier for me to see long hair, as I'm sure most of you ladies know, pain in the butt sometimes. Most of the, forgot what I was saying, never mind. So I have my fabric, oh sorry, kitty, move away, here in the bag. So it's just scrunched up there on the side of it. If you want to be really artistic, once you get the hang of it, you can start trying to make patterns, stuff like that. I'm not worried about it because I like more of the mottled effect. Katie, go away. So your first step is to follow the directions on your soda ash. which this one says, so the soda ash, bring it back up. The soda ash that I use is basically, you want this fabric to soak for 20 minutes, and you want to use one entire packet in a gallon of water. So this is if you're doing big pieces, they want you to use the whole thing. Since I'm not, what I do is I do a tablespoon for each piece of fabric, and it doesn't have to be super, kitty, go away. Sorry, the cat is being annoying. You don't have to be super precise, you know, you're not baking bread, it doesn't have to be, just until you think it's enough. To me, that's a pretty good amount. And that just goes right in the cup. I'll do actually a tiny bit more. So each of these is going to be dyed separately, sort of. So then what I do is I put in 8 ounces of hot water. My Keurig is over here. Obviously make sure any coffee is out. Otherwise you would just boil some water, put it into a cup and just pour it in. No big deal. So while we're waiting, I just want to say thank you to all of my subscribers, all of my commenters. I was really surprised at how many I had. You guys are a really great community. Beer. And yeah, I just love all of the love that everybody gives to everybody else. So the reason I use a Taco Bell cup, obviously recycle, same reason. I can only use this really because you're using such hot water and it's not designed for it. It won't melt, but it will start to get a little weaker on the bottom. So I generally only use this when I dye like twice, like 2 or 3 times. I go to Taco Bell enough, unfortunately, that I don't have a problem with it. I always rinse off my spoon, especially between dyes. But so this cup has about this much in it. It's about 8 ounces. So then what I do is I just pour it right in over the dye, or sorry, over the fabric. I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to see this very well. But let me, so I just pour it right in. Any parts that I don't hit, not a big deal. Those will just be the parts that are mottled, and they stay the original color. And then I don't tie the bag or anything like that. I just want more of the dye to get on there. So what I do is I just squish it up, sorry, like that. And then I just leave it in there. And I just close it so my cat can't get in, and so the heat stays in there longer. So I'm gonna do the same exact thing with my other, once I find where I put my soda ash. So soda ash is also called washing soda. It's the same, they sell them at pool supply stores if you can't find it at Michael's. Joann's, I think, should have it as well, but just in case they don't, you should be able to find it there. So we're going to let that sit for a moment as well, while we wait. You can also, if you don't like the color of a dye, you can buy this. It is a Rit color remover. I've used it before. If you have anything that's super dark, it is going to leave a brownish stain to it, but if you're going to be re-dyeing it, usually it's not a big deal. So if you do mess up, don't worry, it can be fixed. It's the same thing, just stir it up. It might not all dissolve, that's okay. It all depends on how precise you are with your measurements. I'm not, obviously, so not a big deal. If you want to use a little bit more water, you can, to try to get it to cover all of your fabric. Now you don't really need to wash your hands. I think I got a little bit of dye on there, so that's why I'm washing mine. I'm sorry, you don't really need to wear the gloves for this part as much, but when we come back after 20 minutes, we are going to be we're going to be wringing out our fabric, so that's when you're actually going to be touching the soda ash. So that's the part that gets really drying. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it sit for 20 minutes, and I will see you back here then. Hi again, I'm back. So it's been 20 minutes, so let's go ahead and I'm going to tilt you down again so that we can do our next step. So all you're going to do is to open up your bags again, and you're going to squeeze out all of the excess liquid. So put on gloves for this. Do not rinse them out. That is the whole point of this. The soda ash really makes the dye stick better because it opens up the fibers to accept the dye. You don't have to get them super wrung out. Now obviously if you're wearing gloves, you don't have to rinse. Since I'm not, I am. If that makes sense. Okay, so now comes the fun part. So this is where the actual dyeing is going to come in. So I'm going to do the same thing with the 8 ounces of water. But I'm actually I'm going to use 8 ounces of the gray, and then I'm going to use 4 ounces of the colors. Because gray is my dominant color, that's the color that I want the most of. So I don't want there to be too much of each color. Excuse me, just one second, I have to go grab the salt. Sorry about that. So you are going to need salt as well. I forgot about that. This goes into your dye as you're dyeing to help it fix to the fabric, just like the soda ash. And the instructions, you will want to check your instructions just to see, but I'm pretty sure that all of the different fabric dyes do require salt. Now, I'm also going to get a paper towel. This is so that I can test my color to see if it's the color that I want. So I'm going to start off getting 8 ounces of water. From my Keurig. And get my black dye ready, which it's already open, so it's just a matter of pouring it in. Obviously I'm being careful, I don't want to stain my countertops. But it does wipe off pretty easily as long as you don't let it stick. So there's my cup of water. I'm going to tilt you down again because this is the dyeing part. So the reason I'm only doing 8 ounces for gray, even though I'm dyeing both of the fabrics gray, is because I don't want them to be exactly the same. So I'm going to dye it, and I'm sorry if I end up turning like sideways and all that, so is because I don't want them to turn, or I don't want them to be exactly the same color. So you want to use about a tablespoon of salt. Once again, not exact, doesn't really matter. And then this is where I'm going to do my, and I hope this turns out okay, it's hard to tell. So with this black, I use very, very, very little. Because it dyes really fast with the black. So this looks, you can see, very, very dark. It's kind of hard to see on there in the cup, but that's what the paper towel is for. So what I do is I just get out a little bit on the spoon, drop it on the paper towel. So as you can see, this is very, very light gray. So I'm actually going to add a little bit more. You can see even how that little extra is already making it quite a bit darker. I'm going to do just a tad bit more. The colors are going to turn out darker now than they are going to later because the colors do lighten once it's dry. I think this is going to be just about perfect. So you want to wait a second for it to spread because you can see this is mostly water with just a little bit of dye. So it is going to spread out a little bit and change the color. So this one's just a tad bit darker, and I think I'm going to add a little bit more. There we go. So this is the last one I just did, so that really dark. Well, not really dark, but. So then when you actually go to put it into your fabric, you're doing the same thing you did before. Now, once you get your colors and you're starting to put your colors in there, you want to move the bag around as little as possible, because that's going to get more of a mottled effect. Now, if you do want less of a mottled effect, you see my fabric in there? If you do want less of a mottled effect, you can move it around a little bit, just squish it around. That's going to distribute the dye more. But that only really works with one color because otherwise your colors are going to mix, which is not good. So all you're going to do is pour it right on top. I'm only pouring it on half. It's kind of hard to see. But I left this part open because I'm going to try to pour my other color on there. So this first batch I'm going to do, and rinse out your cup in between uses, or in between colors, so that your colors don't mix. So this one I'm only going to use 4 ounces and about half of a tablespoon of salt. And so this one I'm going to be doing my Zenia with, so it's going to be red as my other color, or like a reddish pink. I'm not doing anything. And same thing, rinse off your spoon so that you're not mixing colors. So this is my next color. I have the patterns out. Since my fingers are wet, I'm not going to touch them. Now if you do forget the salt, it's not a big deal. It just won't be quite as dark, which I need to put it in this one. But I've forgotten the salt several different times. Not a big deal. Stop. So this is the first color. I would like a little bit more red. So I actually have a red dye as well, which is the Dylon, because they do not sell it as on Tulip. I'm just going to use a little bit. Oops. Or a lot, because I poured a little too fast. That's all right. This might actually turn out really pretty. We'll see. Ooh, actually it turned out really well. I like this color a lot. So that's the color I'm going to stick with. It is a little dark, but that's all right. Because it will lighten up, and I don't want it to be too light. So then this is going to get poured in. I don't do anything different. Sorry, it's really hard to see if you can see that. So I'm not doing anything different, I'm just pouring it right in, right on. I'm gonna try to hit the spots that I didn't with the other color, with the gray. So I don't know if you can see that or not. So I have like a red, gray, black, vampire color mixture in there. So what I'm going to do is the same thing I did before. I am going to just handle it as gently as I can, twist it around, and let it sit. Now if you're dyeing multiple pieces, what I'm trying to do is not have the same color of gray. So I'm keeping this paper towel as my kind of guide to make sure that I don't have exactly the same color gray. Now if I was going to do all 12 pieces, all 12 Pixies at once, and I wanted them all the same gray color, I could. I would just need to be, I would actually probably do 2 batches in the same cup and try to match up the colors as well as I can. Alright, so I'm going to get my 8 ounces again. Now you may get dye on your hands. Don't worry, it does not dye permanently. Just like I'm sure you probably have permanent marker or something on your hands before. It'll wash off eventually. If you want to wear gloves, you can. You can use the same gloves that you used for your soda ash. But you don't have to. So put in my salt. And then we're going to play with our gray a little bit. So I should note as well, once the soda ash is dissolved in the water, it's not potent anymore as far as you breathing it. So once it's in the water and it's mixed in, it's fine. You don't have to like hold your breath or anything anymore. Alright, so let's try this color. That looks pretty good. These are both the same. I just dripped twice. So this is my color from, I'm sorry, this is my color from before. This one is just slightly darker. Which, actually now that I think about it, I'm going to do it a little bit more dye. I'm try to make it a tad bit darker. So this is the color now. It is pretty dark. If the color ends up getting too dark, what you can do is just add more water to it. You don't have to use it all. You can just use part of it. So I'm just going to wait for a minute for that to kind of dry out a little bit and see what it looks like. Pay no attention to that little blue on the corner. That was a little bit of dye that got on there. Yeah, that's a little bit too dark for my taste. I'm going to put a little bit more water in here. That's better. So it's a little bit in between this one and this one. So this is the one I just did. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and pour it into my other bag. You might be able to see a little bit better in this bag, I hope. So I can already feel this cup is starting to weaken. So I still have some dye in here. I don't need it, so I'm going to toss it. Good. And then with this one, I'm going to do the 6 ounce, or I'm sorry, the 4 ounce again. Actually, it might be 6 now that I'm thinking about it. I think the lowest on my Keurig is 4, so this is the 6 ounce, which is the same amount that I did the red for the last one. Now this one is obviously going to have more dye in it because I am doing 2 other colors. Once again, this is all just play around with it, see what you like. That's why I start with cheaper fabrics, like from Michaels, because that way it's a learning process. So this one is going to be the tealish color. and then a little bit of this lime green color. And I'm really just playing around with it until I get something that I like. So this is my first attempt. It's pretty, I like it. It's not exactly what I wanted, so I'm gonna add a little bit more teal. I think it needs a little bit more blue in it. I'm still trying to figure out a different way that I can do my dyes as far as storing them. I'm thinking if I get some glass bottles or something, like maybe some like little medicine vial type bottles, those might help. Which I know they sell at Michael's because I have some for my bath products. So this is my second one. I like that a lot better. And that's actually pretty close to her green, so that's a color I'm gonna stick with. So my hands are starting to get pretty dyed because it's more my storage system that I have with all of the tape. Just getting that undone, actually you end up getting quite a bit of the powder on your hands, which of course, once it mixes with water, starts to dye it. So I think once I get a better system, it won't be as bad. So I'm trying to get that in there so you can see it. I'm gonna pour this same way I did on the parts of the fabric that are not dyed, and then you know what, I actually like just those two colors, so I think I'm gonna stick with those. I'm not gonna do the purple. If I was to do the purple, I would do the same thing. I would just get the colors, or I'm sorry, get the water, get the purple and dye it, and then pour it on the parts that don't have dye on them yet. Now, when you are doing this kind of dyeing, you want to make sure that you have colors that mix well. So you want colors that are on the same part of the spectrum. You don't want to be mixing, until at least you get more practice, you don't want to be mixing orange and green, because what happens is, I'm sure you can see there, that's all dye. And so it does mix in the bottom of the bag. So that's why you're going to get those mixed colors on your fabric itself. So if you don't have colors that mix well, say orange and green, they're not going to turn out well. I just realized I forgot the salt for that one, for that color. That's all right, no big deal. We'll just see how it comes out. So my version of dyeing, it's very lax. I don't have, that's kind of how I am in general. I don't really care too much about, you know, making sure everything's perfect, making sure I have the same amount of stuff, making sure everything's obviously set ahead of time. But, so these are all the colors that we used, except for that ring, which was for my coffee maker. I did clean it, I promise. I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to toss it. But I am actually really excited about this green color, the one that I chose, so I think that's going to turn out really good. So I hope I didn't make you guys too dizzy. So these I'm going to let sit for 2 to 2.5 hours. Obviously it's going to get a lot less, the heat's going to leach away, but even though the water is cooler, it is still going to get in there. The longer you let it sit, the darker the fabric will become. There is a max. It's not going to say, like if I left it in there overnight, it wouldn't become black because of the amount of dye that I used in the water. But I've found that generally 2 hours is pretty good. It's going to get as dark as it's going to get. But you can make it a lot lighter, either by taking it out really soon, I would let it sit for at least, basically until the water is cooled off, so I'd say at least half an hour to 45 minutes. But I will see you guys soon. We're going to come back or I'll be back in about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and we will see what we ended up with. Hi, I'm back. Okay, so it's been about 2.5 hours. So we're going to go ahead and see what we got. Ooh, sorry about that. Alright, so I'm going to do the red one first. Once I'm done with the bag, I just toss it out. It looks like we're definitely going to have to re-dye this one. The red is too strong of a color and it didn't really get too much of the gray in there. This happened with the teal one last time, if you remember, so what I'm going to do is actually just take the whole piece of fabric, do the same process, but only with the gray dye. But all you do is rinse out your fabric with, I like to alternate between hot and cold. The cold helps the dye get away from the fabric. And then the hot will set it in, so cold water helps to leach it out quite a bit. So I just rinse until the water runs clear. Keep in mind that that is not the final step. Alright, so let's see how the teal one turned out. Yeah, this one I'm going to dye actually again as well with more of the gray. It might be because my black is really old. I love the color on this, but it's just not what I was going for. So yeah, so I'm going to re-dye both of these. I'm not going to color leach anything like that. I'm just going to go back over it with the gray. And there is a lot more white in here than I would like with this big patch right here. So not a big deal. Now if I was happy with these colors, what I would do is I would fill up the sink completely with cold water and just let the fabric sit for a few minutes to completely leach out the color. I do it until I see the water is totally clear. There's not any blue or red or whatever colors you happen to be doing. So once there's none of those left, then I am good to go. I do wash it with a little bit of Dawn. You can also use Woolite, you can use laundry detergent, sorry. So it's really up to you as to what you would like to use. So I'm not going to show the whole process again. I'm going to add just the grays in, do like basically just completely re-dye it gray. And then I will show you guys what it looks like probably in my next update. I will hopefully have my progress on Celtic Wolf and my progress on the Dragon Cell, which is actually what I was just stitching on while I was waiting for the fabric. So I will see you all next time. And hopefully my next video should be up, I want to say in the next week or so, is what I'm hoping. This video is probably going to take a while to upload. But I will see you guys all next time. Thanks for watching. Hi again. So I actually had a little bit of time. My husband ended up coming home from work later, so let's go ahead and look at our gray and see if it turned out. Well, it's definitely gray. Now keep in mind this will lighten up a lot. So it looks pretty much black, but I do still see some red in there, which is good. Most of this, well, I shouldn't say most, a lot of this is going to wash out, a lot of this gray. Now I did not serge the edges of my fabric, so it is fraying a little bit, but that's fine. I knew that was going to happen. Alright, so let's check our blue, or our green. So this one I didn't do quite as dark. There's still that white spot, but you know what, that's fine. I am totally okay with that. Even though I'm tossing the bags, I'm just rinsing them out so they don't get dye all over. You can definitely see the difference of the color in the two fabrics. And what I'm going to do now, before I use soap on them, is I'm going to first rinse that off. I'm going to fill up the sink and let them leach, because as you can see, maybe there's still a lot of the dye coming out. And filling up the sink with water and just letting the fabric sit in there for a while means you're not going to waste a whole lot of water, because you are, it should only take once rather than just letting the water sit there and run on them. Now the green doesn't have too much of the dye seeping out. The red definitely does. And that's going to happen if you use red. Red needs so much dye in order to be red, so much of the color. That's the one that soaks in the most. So you can already tell it's getting a lot lighter. So this is going to take a while. I'm not going to make you sit here and wait, so I will see you back here in a little bit. Alright, so welcome back. So these are pretty much dry. Still a little bit damp, but you can see they definitely lightened up a lot. You can definitely see a lot more of the green over here. The white spot isn't as bad as I thought. It's only white, like, right here. Everything else is green. And the sparkles actually came out pretty good. And this is our red, so I'm really loving this one. So as you can see, the fabrics did fray a lot. So there's the two of them together. But so you always want to make sure you have an extra couple of inches. If you do, I'm gonna flip you around. If you do want to serge your fabrics, you can. The only thing is that if you use a polyester thread or depending on the cotton, some of the cottons, the polyester will not dye at all. It will not take the dye. So it will show up whatever color you use while the rest of your fabric will dye. The cotton, depending on which fabric you're trying to dye, it might be the same color, but it might be a little bit lighter or a little bit darker than your fabric, depending on how the fabrics take it. Or, I'm sorry, the thread takes the dye. Different fabrics also do dye differently. If you buy hand-dyed fabric, I'm sure they tell you that. Most of them should. So if you really are doing an expensive piece of fabric, I would definitely test dye it first. I would also measure your... If you want to use the same color, to dye multiple pieces, measure the amount of dye you use, because you should get consistent results among all of them. And I think that's it. So I'm not sure, like I said, when I will post next. I'm hoping it's going to be pretty soon. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you all have a great stitchy week. Bye!